Hi, everyone. So this lecture is going to discuss what a multimodal project is and how to think about this for literature and the environment. So there are multiple types of multimodal projects. So I'm going to name some of them, but it's not an exhaustive list, so keep that in mind. There are blogs, videos, which could be like graphic speeches, PSA, action videos, musical, podcasts, and any other ideas. So just be creative. Think about what we've looked at, analyzed for this class, right? So of course, we've analyzed a lot of traditional texts, but we've also watched a lot of videos. We've listened to podcasts. So we have encountered many different ways to talk about important issues. And it's helpful to think about, what these type of multimodal projects accomplish. So for example, I assigned you to look at different creation myths, and I could have assigned all textual based creation myths. So just reading them, but instead I assigned one video or multiple videos, I should say, that actually artistically depicted the creation myths of different Native American groups. And think about what you gain from that. So what is the difference from watching the creation myth versus just reading it? Do you think you learned more? Did it give you a different experience? And so there's a lot of good reasons to do a multimodal project instead of just a traditional paper. Also consider a lot of the ways information is disseminated today is multimodal, unless you are specifically in academia. If you are specifically an academic or a scientist, you will utilize the traditional essay, certainly. But for the general public, it's actually quite rare that someone is going to read a traditional essay for the sake of learning something. What will someone do? They will watch a documentary. They will listen to a podcast, right? Those are the typical ways. If someone wants to learn something, they're going to use apps, right? All of these more modern devices are modes, you can call them, rather than just the mode of the traditional essay. So that's why we're ending the class like this, kind of moving into the 21st century and thinking about different ways to think about and talk about important issues. So I want to talk about each of the modes that I've laid out as possibilities. So if you do a blog, think about multiple pages and posts. You want to know your audience and build your aesthetic. So if you take a look at blogs, if there's blogs that you like or different websites from bloggers you follow, they're all going to have their own aesthetic or look, right? So someone who's doing an environmental blog is going to have a much different look than, say, someone who has a sports blog. And this can be in terms of the colors they choose, the pictures they utilize, the font choices even. So you want to build your aesthetic to something that your audience is going to appreciate and helps build your message. A lot of times in blog posts, people will use outside references, and the citation style is different here. A lot of times people will hyperlink other sources. So that's really helpful. It's a great way to share information, is that if you're referencing something else, you simply provide a hyperlink, and it makes it really easy for the reader to go find that source on their own. Make sure you're not just copying and pasting. Of course, when you're doing a blog, you're not just copying and pasting other people's information or content. It's in that way, the citation style is the same. If you're using someone else's work, you have to reference it. And I might even argue that it's higher stakes in a blog to make sure that you're referencing, because yes, in the context of an academic course, if you plagiarize, if you use AI for your work or something like that, you're going to get reprimanded, or if you continually do it or have an egregious type of plagiarism, you could fail the class, you could get kicked out of school. But still, it's a little bit different in the outside world of academia, because if you plagiarize someone's work, you could actually be legally accountable for that, right? So you cannot steal someone's intellectual property. That is theft. It's considered actual theft. So even though that you're doing this for a class, if you steal someone else's work and publish it, you can be considered accountable for that. So end of story is, do not do that. Do not just copy and paste other people's images, words, anything like that. Certainly though, mix images, videos, sound, and text. So that's not to discourage you from using outside material that's helpful. You just have to make it clear what is yours and what you're taking from someone else, whether that's an image, video, sound, or text. And think about, is it interesting to you? So if you know you have a good blog, if you think, yeah, this is something I'd want to read or look at, it's interesting, right? And some sites to use that are free are Weebly, WordPress, Google Blogger. There's certainly no reason to purchase a domain or something like that for the sake of this class. There's lots of free online websites that you can use. All right, videos. It's probably easier than ever to create a video. You can literally do it on your phone with some pretty good free software. But you want to make sure you give yourself enough time to edit and make clean and frequent camera shifts. Making a good video is difficult because we really take for granted the editing process of a film, of course, but also just what people publish to the internet. And you'll see it very clearly when someone who's not good at creating video content does it. It makes you appreciate people who are good, because oftentimes, if they're taking a video like this, the camera's moving, you're getting dizzy, there's wind in the background, so the sound quality is not good. They're just talking into their phone, so it's kind of boring to look at. There's no different shifts. They're not including multiple, scenes or content or things like that. Oftentimes, if it's someone just talking with no music or something like that, it almost comes off as strange, because a lot of times when people edit videos, they have layered sound. So you really have to pay attention to like videos that you think are done well or that you liked. So if there was any from this semester, for example, that you're like, oh, that was really interesting, that was good, I liked it. Really try to pay attention to what they did, right? With the camera shifts, the way they use text overlay, what was the sound like, and so forth. So focus on audience and purpose and make your message the center to build every other choice around: music, camera angles, interviews, camera shots, voiceover, use of text. Definitely consider sound quality. I have seen some really great projects and ideas get ruined because they were filmed in wind, right? So you got to make sure that your sound is working. You can use phone, iPhone or Android or computer programs, really any to edit. So I haven't even added suggestions because there are so many free apps now. They're probably just already on your phone, right? So, or on your computer. So whatever is user-friendly to you, and make sure everyone in your project has okayed it. So this isn't another cautionary tale, just like the blog. Don't just steal other people's content, and don't just film people without their consent either, right? So if you're going to publish something online, make sure everyone in your project that's going to be in the video has okayed it. Musical. So we didn't do a lot of examples like these, but there's a lot of really good kind of videos or podcasts that include musical elements. Obviously, if you do this, sound quality is a major concern, but I want you to utilize your own talents and interests. So if you have musical talent and you want to incorporate that into your multimodal project, by all means. And then finally, let's talk about podcasts. So we did do a few podcasts this semester. Sound quality and editing are top priorities. So you want to make sure that there's not a ton of ums or dead air, kind of like I'm doing now, right? Right? We want to avoid that as much as possible. The story must be interesting and evocative. So what is your message and purpose? And along with that, will this story grab someone not within a particular topic? Does it have a message that can be generalized to a larger audience? This is something we really talk about a lot in perspective writing or creative nonfiction. I'm teaching a composition class right now too, and we're talking about this a lot, is you can write a story that's really specific to your experience, or write about an environmental justice topic that's really specific to your knowledge, because in some ways you're all experts now, right? You just took a literature and environment course, you're finishing a course. So you have a lot of specialized knowledge that other people don't have, but that doesn't mean you can't create something that would be really interesting to other people. So you want to think about the overall themes, human themes, that can be interesting to people. I mean, even think about the story of Chris McCandless from Into the Wild. Very specific, right? How many people have gone into the Alaska wild and left everything they own and everyone that they know? Not very many, right? But still, the way that story is told in its specificity is still really universal to how a lot of people feel, right? And so it's possible to use a really specific story to talk about big themes. And oftentimes when people try to talk about big themes without being specific, without using details, it just kind of comes off as preachy and it's not that relatable. This is kind of the idea of using a parable or a fable. People want the story, they want the example. Just talking about like brotherhood or love or environmental awareness, but without a story attached, it's just not that interesting, right? So using examples and stories is really important. Make sure you go into the recording prepared, so you're not wasting your time or, having dead air or having to re-record. For example, like even when I record lectures, I have all my notes and everything already ready to go. So I have done everything, all of my prep work, all of my notes, all of my reading, and all of my PowerPoint before I click record, because it would be kind of a waste of time to click record and not really have anything to say because I don't know what I'm talking about, right? So you need to do all of your prep work before you go into the recording. And then again, both phone and computer software can record, but you need to publish it online. So that is a requirement of this project, is you still have to publish it online. There's lots of different ways to do that. There's different sound file sites that will give you a URL after you publish it, but you can also use a blog. So it's possible to have a blog and then post your podcast to that blog, and then the URL will be that specific page, and that's fine too. Okay, so final thoughts about this. In terms of a multimodal project, these are the questions that you will need to cover. So, is there a focus on an important issue of environment? Is the audience, purpose, medium, and context for the multimedia project clear? Does the medium make sense for the intended purpose? Is the multimedia project rhetorically effective, or can the audience easily buy into the message? Is there a focus on craft and attention to detail? And is the multimedia project easily accessible and available through URL and user-friendly? I'm going to come back to that last one because it's really important. But one of the ways that I'm going to judge this or grade it is through your reflection. So I'm not going to just, watch, listen, read your multimodal project and decide for myself if I think there's a focus on environment, if the audience, purpose, medium, and context makes sense, all of those things. You're going to make an argument for yourself that you have done these things in a 1 to 2 page reflection that explains why you chose your particular issue and medium and how your project reflects on issues of the environment. So still, you should use scholarly language and it should be thoroughly edited. And then at the end of your paper, you'll include the link to your project. So what that means is what you are submitting is a paper. That's how you're going to submit this project. You're going to submit a paper, and then at the end of the paper, you're going to have the link to the project. So when I get your project, I will be reading your basically justification for why you did the multimodal project you did. And then I am going to be able to click your link to actually read it, watch it, listen to it, whatever it might be. So one really important thing about this, though, is you need to make sure that you have a URL and that it's available. So I'm going to say that again, just because it is so important. And every time I do a multimodal project, there's always someone who gets a 0 because they have not done this. It has to be available through a URL. That means do not just submit a video. Do not just submit a file of sound. You will not get credit if it's not available, actually published online through a URL. I should be able to click a web address and get to your project. But also, it needs to be user-friendly. So I should be able to click on the project and I'm there. So that seems obvious, right? But two of the problems I see most often are if people have created a blog, they have given me a link that does not take me directly to their blog. So I have to kind of go searching, and sometimes I can find it and sometimes I can't. So for example, if you create a blog and create a page that has a specific post, and that's what you want me to be looking at, but you've only supplied the URL to the main blog, not the page or the post, I'm not necessarily going to find your environmental justice multimodal project, right? So make sure it's user-friendly and it's easy to navigate to. The second problem I often see when people submit, and this is the more common problem, is that they have submitted their URL that's in draft form. So for example, if you create a blog and you're working on the blog, right, you're typing it, you think it's ready, and you just go to your web address, copy what's there and paste it for me to open, what's going to happen? It's going to, on my computer, when I try to open it, it's probably going to ask me to sign into your blog, because what you have copied and pasted is your draft version inside your account. That would kind of be like me saying like, oh, I want someone to read this email. So I just, on top of my Gmail, copy the web address and send it to someone. That would never work, right? Because when someone else would try to open that on their computer would prompt them to sign into my Gmail, right? And that's not going to work. And you're not able to do that. So you have to make sure that you are submitting a public URL, And I think one of the best ways to test this is to send your URL to someone that's opening it on a different computer. And the reason why I say that is to not even just test it on your own, is because we are always signed into our stuff. So for example, if I have multiple Blogger accounts, and if I write a blog on my computer, I could possibly think that it is the public URL, because every time I click it, I get to my blog, right? But that's because I'm always signed into my Gmail. I never sign out of it. Just like I'm always signed into my Golden Gate University email. So I'm never signed out of it. So how do I really know if it's public or not on a different computer? However, if I say send that to my spouse and he opens it at his work computer and it comes up, he can see my post, we know that's public, right? Because he is not signed into my Gmail on his work computer somewhere else. So that's what I suggest you do. And again, just to, I know I'm talking about this a lot, but I don't want you to do all this work and then not get credit for it. It needs to be a URL. So do not just submit a file. Do not just submit a video. You will not get points for it. You need to submit the project through a URL. That means it needs to actually be published online. So yes, you're submitting your essay file, your typical Word doc, but the URL to the project should be at the bottom of that. Okay, so that's a lot of information, but really, I hope you're not too intimidated by this project. It actually should be fun, and it gives students a chance to be creative and submit their knowledge in a way that's a little bit different. Of course, if you have questions, please let me know.